Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Going to be looking at another Lindberg kit. This one's a 1960 Lindberg kit of the Douglas F4D-1 Skyray. It's in 1/48 scale, and it's kit number 52398. So it's got a 98-cent price extension. So it's suggested retail price of 98 cents. Got box art by Ray Gadke with his signature right here across the bottom. And Ray Gadke did some fantastic box art. This era is really great. A lot of dynamic, plane flying right out of the box look. I mean, what kid could resist this kit? So the Skyray, the F4D, it's commonly nicknamed the Ford. That's a kind of play on the F4D name. Originated as a design study, D571-1 by Ed Heinemann, right after World War II. Information about swept wings and flying wings had been filtering into the U.S. and was being distributed amongst the manufacturers. And so Ed Heinemann, started developing this design. It was supposed to be an extremely fast climbing pure interceptor. It was a delta wing supposed to be powered by two Westinghouse J-34s with afterburners. Initially, it had a really thick wing with no real fuselage, just a kind of a pod cockpit stuck on the front of that really thick wing. June 47, the Navy development contract was issued. The aircraft was refined further to having a thinner wing to increase the speed. Engine got swapped out for a single Westinghouse J40, and a formal requirement was issued by the Navy in 1948. The requirements that they wanted to see out of it was a 50,000 foot altitude achieved within 5 minutes of takeoff. Mock-up was reviewed in March of 49, and at that time the J40 engine was canceled. And the prototype had the Allison J35 substituted in. It was a little bit of a lower power engine, but they wanted to get the aircraft up and flying. But ultimately, they would replace that J35 with Pratt & Whitney J57. Its first flight ended up being on 23 January of 1951. The first production aircraft came off the line in June of 54, with the first flight of that first production aircraft occurring on 5 June. It was said that it was the first naval fighter to exceed Mach 1 in level flight. That's been questioned a lot as to whether that was true or not. It's possible that the Skyray could have done it in a dive as opposed to straight and level. The Navy acknowledges the first aircraft to truly fly Mach 1 in level flight as being the F-11F Tiger. So the stories of the Skyray breaking the sound barrier in level flight are probably spurious. It got through carrier trials by September of 55 and became deployed to the fleet in April of 56. This was a pretty spectacular aircraft, and Ed Heinemann was awarded the Collier Trophy in 1953. And the aircraft set the world speed record, or absolute speed record, in 1953 with 752.943 miles an hour, and also set a time to altitude record from a standing start to 49,221 feet or 15,000 meters in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. So this was a pretty hot ship for its time. Only a total of 422 were built. Only one model, the F4D-1, was actually produced. There was a couple other ideas that didn't go any further. The F4D in 1962's designation got changed under the Uniformed Services code changes, and that became the F6A. The first operational squadron was VC3 in April of 56. They became VFAW for an all-weather fighter squadron. They were assigned to NORAD, and they were the only Navy squadron to actually be assigned to NORAD for the defense of North America. The aircraft were phased out by 1964. we're kind of in that period where things were moving so fast that by the time all the bugs were worked out and it got into service, more powerful aircraft were right behind it. So the F4D, while really good looking plane and was able to achieve quite a bit initially, was passed up by the developments that were happening so rapidly in the 50s. So let's take a look at our kit here. So we've got some pretty neat artwork, as we saw on here. The paint scheme that's being shown here is very similar to the prototype. And then we've got what Lindberg seemed to be doing with a lot of their kits in the mid to late 50s was adding rockets to just about everything. So you got these pairs of blue rockets being stuck on here, some blue drop tanks added, and we've got the pilot up in here with, not quite sure what this is supposed to be here. But we got the Lindberg logo here, 41 parts, authentic construction, plastic airplane kit with movable control surfaces and a scale engine, and the Skyray by Paul Lindberg. On the side, we've got quarter scale again, all plastic parts, and a line drawing of the Skyray, kind of a top view. This side is similar. See the tape that was used to hold the box closed in the store. On the end, we got a repeat of the box art from the top and the kit number. Price extension has been covered over by this little price tag on top. And on this side here, you can see the full price extension. This end's a little bit faded out. And let's open it up. So it's a lithograph slick that's been wrapped around a hard box and glued down. You can kind of see what the unfaded color looks like there. A little bit brighter than what you see on the outside of the box. And here's our instructions. And this is printed on kind of a slick paper here. So we've got basically an exploded view of the kit, image of the kit completed. And here's the motor and afterburner. A little plug for Lindberg plastic cement to use. And the steps. No, nothing here. So the steps, I guess you're supposed to kind of follow along with the numbers on here. So start out by assembling the motor, looking at this piece here first. And then not much for a cockpit. We do have a separate pilot. And some landing gear. There's a stand, or this kind of delta-shaped arrowhead stand. And we've got movable ailerons, movable rudder. No movable elevons, it looks like, but there is a little hatch piece that can open up to reveal the motor inside. And pointing out some of the decal placements. Then here we have a kind of photo drawing, kind of retouched, enhanced photograph showing the completed model. Again, showing decal placement on the top. And then we have a whole mess of other kits available from Lindberg. Kind of interesting stuff. This flying saucer here, I believe Glencoe ended up with the molds for that that flying saucer, and we've seen a couple of these other kits in other videos. We just recently saw the Thunderceptor, or no, wait, we haven't seen the Thunderceptor yet. A little giveaway there. We will be seeing the Thunderceptor soon. The F-88 we've seen, the P-47 we've seen. And let's see, that's about it so far. But a few of these other kits will be getting featured because I do have a lot of these other ones. So there are your instructions. Then we got our decals. A little bit yellowed and not the best shape. And this one here, 130740. is the actual first production aircraft. It was delivered in 1954 to Naval Air Facility, China Lake. It was bailed back to Douglas to continue doing testing, and it ended up being involved in some sort of an accident on May 25th, 55, where it was written off at El Segundo. So Douglas, one of their facilities, I believe where they were building Skyrays, was at El Segundo. That's where Ed Heinemann was based out of as well. So that was the end of this aircraft. And we've got on the back here the kit number and Skyray and instructions on how to put on decals. Looks like these were made in Chicago by the Chicago Decal Company. All right, so I will show you some pictures here. Or wait, no, there are no pictures of this aircraft that I was able to find. But this paint scheme was used on the prototype. So I do have a couple images of that to kind of show how close this was. The air intakes, I think, are a little off. This, I think, is part of, possibly from the prototype. A little off. Something kind of strange about this is that this kit comes out in 1960, so this is well after this aircraft has been in service. So it's kind of strange that they're using the prototype's paint scheme on this. I could see if this was a kit that came out in 1955, where that might be the case. But this thing's 5 years later, and the Skyray's about out of service by this point. So a little odd choice of it, but I guess it is a good looking paint job. So let's take a look at that here. Okay, so let's take a look at our plastic here. And so I got our fuselage halves. Big model. It barely fits inside this box, especially how thick the fuselage here is. So we've got a series of raised panel lines. Looks like the kit's gotten a little dirty. And a little bit of rivet detail that's pretty fine along there. Some actual raised panels, not just panel lines, across there. A little bit of detail for the cockpit area, although it's completely empty on the inside. And there's our intake. Shape looks a little different than what's on the box art. On the bottom here, we've got a little spot here for where one of the rocket tabs would go on. And no detail inside the wheel well, nothing on this one. In fact, the front door is in the closed position. This side here, we've got this opening for where you'd be able to see the little flap for the engine that could go inside. And let's take a look at our fit here, see how this comes out. Not the tightest fit in the world. There's the slot for the stand. So this would definitely need a little bit of cleanup to get rid of some panel lining, or seams, I should say, on there. So there's your fuselage halves. We've got our wings. There's our bottom wings. Got raised panel lines and a lot more rivets on here. And these are the undersides of the wings and no representation of the cannons. It had 4 20mm Mark 12 cannons, 2 on each wing, that were positioned just under the center line on the bottom. Got large tabs here to be able to fit into the fuselage. And here's where your ailerons would go. Here's top half of the wings. Same thing again. Fairly fine panel lining. A little bit more rivet on here as well on the top wings. And nothing on the inside, so completely empty wheel wells. Let's see what else. Here's our aileron pieces. Two-piece, a little bit of rivet, a little bit of raised line detail. Let's see that for you. Let me show you that wing too. You can see the level of detail with those highlight there. Okay, so another aileron. Here's our engine. So I guess this is supposed to be the J57. Well, that's the afterburner. Sorry, and then here's the J57. So not too bad. Not the most spectacular in there. And then this would, I guess, fit on the front there. So when you look inside the air intakes, you'd actually get to see something in there. And this piece would then go on at the end here for the afterburner. Okay. And what else we got? And here's some of our gear. Fairly simplified. There's our wheels. A little bit of detail on them. There's your typical generic Lindberg quarter scale pilot who looks a little skinny. And he's not really sitting on much. What else we got here? Here's our drop tanks. Drop tanks have got raised panel lining and rivet detail on it as well. Here's our nose probe, which was not on the production aircraft. This is indicative of the prototype. I think this is more of what this particular one is copied after. Here's our fins for our drop tanks. Our seat for our pilot. A little bit of a headrest detail up there, but the rest is just kind of a regular plain old bent piece. Here's our rockets. Typical 50s representation of rockets, just very simple, and you know the fins are done the wrong way. Here's our nose wheel. Oleo, or the flexing part here is solid instead of having an open hole. Here's our pylons for the drop tanks. We do get a little separate plate for Skyray. That would then mount on this part, which then mounts on the display stand. And this would go on here, something like that. So kind of a dynamic looking stand. Here's the part that attaches then to the fuselage. And it looks like we get a little pin to help hold that in place. And what else we got? Here's our little piece that opens up to show the engine. Rudder half. And then this here, this little cellophane bag is what some of these small parts would have come in. And so it's been opened, but it's got kind of plasticky cellophane. And then finally the canopy. So the canopy does have raised framing. This whole back half would be solid. So this would paint up pretty good. Thickness isn't too terribly bad. It's a little thick. It's not the best molding in the world. But I think you get a pretty good representation on there. And would kind of hide the lack of interior detail going on. All right, so there you have it. That is your Lindberg Ford. So this this issue here, the 62 one or 60 issue, is the original, and they reissued it in 62 with different box art. 76 was reverted back to this original box art on the white box. And let's see. Then there was also 76 Lindberg Neo Misa, which was the Mexico issues of Lindberg kits. Company down there was repopping the Lindberg kits in Mexico. 84, there was a photo box. And finally, into the 2000s, there was another different type of photo used for another photo box issue. And that's it. So not a lot of issues of the Skyray, which is surprising because this is a pretty dynamic-looking aircraft that I think attracts a lot of people. So I'm a little surprised at how few of issues that were being done on this. So that's it for this one. If you've built one of these, of course, tell us about it in the comments section. If you got one of these still sitting on your shelf, take a picture of it, send it in so we can share it with others in our next viewer build video. Email address is in the channel description if you'd like to send in those photos. If you got other pictures of other vintage build kits, send those in as well too. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the ones that we're featuring. If you got some other vintage kits you would like to show off to others, send those in as well. Well, that's all for this one. It's all for today. Thanks for watching, and as always, have yourself a great rest of your day.